Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now in our 25th episode of 2025. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. In Washington, D.C., the House is out of session this week, and the Senate is in recess starting tomorrow. Senate leaders continue to navigate the reconciliation process with the lofty goal of completion by July 4th. With bipartisan opposition, it remains unclear if the 10-year moratorium on enforcement of state AI laws in exchange for broadband expansion funds will survive. We'll continue to monitor the developments closely. We'd also like to congratulate Olivia Trusty, who was confirmed to the Federal Communications Commission last night. With the departure of both Commissioners Stark and Symington earlier this month, her confirmation gives the Republicans a 2-1 majority at the FCC and the ability to continue advancing policy. We look forward to working with her and the rest of the FCC to streamline and advance critical infrastructure to help close the digital divide. In other important news, the bipartisan bicameral Universal Service Fund, USF, working group was relaunched last week to explore and propose potential reforms to USF. The effort is being led by U.S. Senators Deb Fischer from Nebraska and Ben Lujan from New Mexico, along with Representatives Richard Hudson from North Carolina and the Chair of Communications Technology and Ranking Member Doris Matsui from California. And additional members will include Senators Moran, Klobuchar, Capito, Peters, Sullivan, and Rosen. Now that Fiber Connect 2025 is in our rear view, the Fiber Broadband Association continues to work its way around North America. Our next regional workshop will be in Anchorage, Alaska on July 17th. You guys won't want to miss that. Anchorage is beautiful this time of year. After Anchorage, we'll be in Toronto in August, Spokane in September, Scottsdale in October, Kansas City in November, and we'll finish the year out in Palm Springs with our premier member meeting in December. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest is again Gene Cruzy, the CEO of Surf Internet, to discuss Surf Internet's 200,000 fiber passings, accelerating rural deployment across the Great Lakes. But before I formally introduce today's guests, I'd like to introduce David Norris from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thank you very much, Gary, and thank you everyone who's joined us today. We appreciate it. Before I go over a few logistics, we'd like to once again thank our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco. Now, please keep in mind, as participants, you are in listen-only mode. To ask a question, please use the question tool, which is located in the lower left-hand side of your screen. We will have a Q&A session with our panelists today, so we look forward to hearing from your questions. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours, and you can find that in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast option. Finally, at the conclusion of today's presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. If you could take a moment to do so, we really appreciate it. We appreciate your input. And with that, I will pass things back over to Gary to get us started. Gary?
Thanks, David. And good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the president and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest was Ron Westfall, analyst in residence for Hyperframe Research, who discussed agentic AI and the future of fiber, powering scalable, resilient, and intelligent networks. So Ron gave us a quick tutorial on agentic AI and provided numerous of examples on how companies are leveraging fiber networks and agentic AI to automate processes and gain incredible efficiencies without constant human interaction. So if you missed last week's session, you can go to the Fiber Broadband Association's website and watch the replay. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest today is Gene Cruzy, the CEO of Surf Internet, to discuss Surf Internet's 200,000 fiber passings, accelerating rural deployment across the Great Lakes. Gene is the founder and CEO of Surf Internet, a fiber optic broadband company headquartered in Elkhart, Indiana. Since the early 1990s, he's been a pioneer in the broadband industry, helping to bring internet connectivity to Goshen College and launching one of Northern Illinois' first internet service providers. Under his leadership, Surf has grown into a regional powerhouse, expanding high-speed fiber across Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan with a mission to transform connectivity for unserved or underserved communities. Gene is also an endurance athlete, having completed Ironman triathlons, long-distance swims, and cycling events. He lives in Elkhart with his wife, Michelle, and their family, a lifelong Elkhart County resident. He holds a degree from Goshen College and Purdue University. So welcome, Gene. And for audience, please type in your questions to go. And with that, I will turn things over to Gene. Tell us a little about what you've got going on with Surf Internet.
Hey, good morning, Gary, and thanks for inviting us to the show. I really enjoy getting to know you, and I appreciate your help on our book. We published a book about the broadband digital divide, and we can dive into that a bit later. But let me just give you a high-level overview of Surf. A couple years ago, I was speaking at a Rotary Club event, and the host said, "Hey, give me a bio," and I said, "Don't worry about a bio, just make something up." And so he introduced me as, "Hey, this is Gene Cruzy, the inventor of the internet." And we know that I didn't invent the internet, that Al Gore did. But no, seriously, for Surf in our communities, we were one of the first internet connections over 25 years ago that many of them had. We started as a dial-up ISP in the late 90s. It's our 25-year heritage. Transitioned over to residential fixed wireless. We got into E-rate using fixed wireless licensed microwave to do E-rate for schools and commercial, and then ultimately ended up building fiber for residential. And we're currently at 212,600 passings, increasing a few hundred every day. We're trying to do 8,000 to 10,000 passings per month right now. We have about 300 team members. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that really Surf is a people business. We just happen to be transforming the communities through our people by deploying fiber technology, but 25 years ago we did it by a dial-up, and in 5 years we'll probably be doing something different. So we're really a people transformation business, and just excited to be here, Gary.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate that. And I wasn't sure if David was supposed to advance some slides there, but let's just kick off with, the recent BEAD revisions from Secretary Ludnick. So on June 6th, Secretary Ludnick on NTI put down some revisions to policy for the BEAD program. And according to all the stats for the Indiana Broadband Office, it appears that Surf is the largest recipient of the Indiana Connectivity Program's funds. So I'm assuming that you guys are pretty active in BEAD across the states you serve. So can you tell us a little bit about what states you're applying for and where you are in the process, and then kind of how the new rules, new policy impacts providers like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. So we're interested in pursuing BEAD in Indiana, Michigan, Illinois. I think we're pre-approved in Wisconsin, and we had looked at Iowa. And there were some preliminary awards made that were rescinded. I'm not sure what we're publicly allowed to say or not allowed to say, but it was pretty substantial in the states that we're participating in. So I think there's an important element of our company that we haven't talked about, which is we are also a fixed wireless operation. We currently have around 5,000 fixed wireless subscribers on around 500 towers in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. And we also were active in the CBRS auction a number of years ago. So we purchased licenses for around $5 million in CBRS spectrum. So we hadn't really planned on leveraging those assets to deploy broadband. We were really approaching BEAD with a fiber first mindset. And, I think I just want to say publicly that I hope that we can get this right. Like, it feels like every 3 years, the federal government comes out with some subsidy that puts a Band-Aid on broadband. And I really hope that when we get to the back end and we're looking in the rearview mirror, we can say that we did the best we could with the dollars we had. And so I actually brought up a slide for a county in Indiana called Newton County. And this is sort of Surf's gritty approach to piecing together funding to get people connected. So Newton County has a population of 13,972. So there's 5,600 broadband service locations in the FCC database. So just want to start with that number in mind, 5,600. So starting in 2020, we won an E-rate deal where Surf invested $1.7 million to build a middle mile E-rate network. We used cost allocation, so E-rate paid for the school portion, Surf paid for the extra capacity that we could eventually do fiber to the home. That gave us an infrastructure that allowed us to then apply for Indiana Next Level Connection funds. So we won a $670,000 grant to connect 300 addresses. But what that allowed us to do is get fiber between rural areas to be able to light up more urban areas. So the town of Lake Village and the town of Roselawn. So then Surf invested another $1 million to connect 700 additional underserved. That inspired the county to say, what more can you do? So the county came forward and realized that there were very few BEAD eligible addresses in that county because they were all advertised as being covered by other fixed wireless operators. And they're doing a good job, by the way. We're not throwing those folks under the bus. But the county came up with a $4 million grant. We matched it with about $5 million. And where we stand today is that the county is somewhere between 95 and 97% covered. So we have about 5,400 covered addresses with fiber between Surf's Fiber. There's a few other small fiber providers that have a few towns. And what I think is interesting is the remaining 200 BSLs are at an average density of less than 1 home per mile. And so we're now partnering with a local fixed wireless operator to provide fiber to their towers, and then they can provide a higher capacity fixed wireless link from the tower to the subscriber. And then ultimately, some of those folks are just going to have to go with LEO, some kind of satellite service, because they're like 12 miles from the nearest anything, and it's just what's going to work. So we're taking a very gritty approach. So now to go back and answer your question, we see this as an opportunity to maybe bring in some fixed wireless as part of our playbook, but we also see that there's a 180-day possible delay between when the funding was going to be launched and when it probably will actually hit the street, and then it'll probably be delayed even further with contract negotiations. So we're taking a pretty aggressive approach. I'm taking to our board of directors on Friday a project that will reach 5,000 rural passings in 2 counties that we're already sort of heavily invested in. And those addresses aren't going to be BEAD eligible because they're already advertised as being covered by fixed wireless. So essentially, we're going to go in and just do it before the BEAD program even gets started. We found a way to do it at attractive unit economics. We believe that we'll get good penetration. We've already done some test markets there. The ARPU is solid. The customer interest is high. And those counties can end up saying they're 90% plus fiber served. So that's our approach. In the meantime, we're reanalyzing our initial BEAD applications. There's some places we're just going to stick with what we had offered. Indiana is going to change some of the rules that will allow us to be a little more aggressive in how we approach things. And so we're in the back just crafting a new plan going forward. We expect to pursue 25 to 45,000 passings through the BEAD program in the 3 states.
Wow. So one of the questions that came in, and you mentioned this a little bit in Newton County, but from overall your 200,000 build out, what is your typical density?
Yeah, I mean, cost effectively, we like to be in the 55 to 75 homes per mile range. Today, about 5% of our passings are funded by grants. And so those tend to be at a 17 to 30 home per mile density. We found in the BEAD stuff that we're applying for thus far, it's less than 20 homes per mile.
So another friend of mine is asking, with the new BEAD notice, it allows providers to craft their own funding areas. And some states already allowed that, but now it's nationwide. Do you think that will increase participation, or is the schedule too tight to really make any sufficient adjustments?
I think for those of us that put a bunch of time into it, like for example, Michigan had a rule where you had to have contiguous high cost, whatever they call the areas in Michigan. We analyzed the entire region, and then we whittled it down to an application that worked for our financial model and our construction capacity. And so we already have all the work done for all the neighboring areas. And so for now, with the new rules, where it's allowed, we'll be able to expand that and go out. So it will likely expand our actual BEAD applications. So
one of the things that in the initial NOFA was, and in essence, the statute was to try to avoid cherry picking. We had a lot of cherry picking in the past, which really made it very difficult to really get people interested in the very difficult locations. So with this new flexibility, is that going to leave some people behind?
I believe it probably will, yeah. I think like Illinois, for example, chose a high cost, difficult to reach first round. And so those projects that could have been awarded would have been the most difficult to reach and most expensive. And so the fact that we've already done that engineering puts us in a pretty good spot.
So, I was up in DC. Drew Clark had his Speed for BEAD event, and he had a lot of state broadband offices and things. And even at our event, when we had our state broadband policy, our summit, things come up like, when you don't have right of way, when you have to go against private owners' land. Can you tell us about some of those issues and how that prevents some families from being able to get served by your company and others like you guys?
Yeah, Gary, that's a timely question, one that we're actually addressing right now. We were awarded a $10.8 million Connect Illinois Round 3 grant, which is the round before BEAD. And I think about 70% of the addresses that we were awarded are isolated or stranded or blocked by significant areas that have no right of way. So in Illinois, especially in the rural areas, there's significant parts of the state where the landowner owns to the middle of the road. And so, what we found in the initial research is that many of the parcel owners don't actually live on the parcel, they're somewhere else. And so we have to track them down through a GIS database. And some of those parcels are in trusts. And it gets really complicated because you end up having, I think it's more than 1.5 parcels per passing, because you have to go through multiple farm fields that are owned by different owners to get to an actual address. So we've engaged a third party that we created a sort of a postcard with a QR code that allowed the owners to come back to a website. So we did that. We got about 70% of the people that said, yeah, we would love to have broadband. We'll give you permission across our property, et cetera. And then the remaining 30%, we deployed door-to-door resources. And now I think we're down to about the remaining 15%, and we're engaging them through county commissioners. We actually have Devin from the state office in Illinois is going to help us craft a letter to let the homeowners or the property owners know how important this is. And, I think one of the challenges with the grant is that the community hears grant and they think, wow, Gene's walking around with $10.8 million in his wallet and he's just getting rich off these passings. But what isn't obvious is that we're actually matching that with about $20 million of our own money. And we're actually paying double what we normally would pay on a per pass basis anywhere else. And then we're dealing with all the complexity of the grant. And so at the end of the day, it's a pretty tough equation. But what the property owner hears is they got a bunch of money, so they can pay me for this right away. And we just have to educate them and help them get through that. And that's really kind of what we talked about in this book it was all of the nuances of building rural fiber, about the right-of-way issues and the railroad issues and aerial versus underground versus plowing. Something that's pretty common in rural areas is to want to plow, but some counties don't allow plowing. And in other areas, especially in this project we're doing now in Illinois, the drainage tile system is over 100 years old, and it's a couple of generations past since anybody's actually worked on it. So nobody knows where it is, and it's not locatable. And so, we crafted a strategy where we have a business development person go out farm by farm and talk to the farmer and say, where is your drainage tile? Do you know? How can we work together to avoid it and kind of work on the right of entry agreement at the same time?
So let's talk about your book for a second. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, we wanted to establish ourselves as an expert in broadband and a leader, and we wanted to get engagement. So about a year and a half ago, we published a book. The intent was to be a blueprint to walk elected officials and community representatives and champions through the broadband deployment process, to be aware of all the pain that could go with construction, underground, aerial, plowing, boring, what the locates flags mean, what it could mean for permitting. A common challenge for us at SURF, we build a lot of very small rural towns with under 2,000 homes, is that they may have one person that does all the utility locates for the entire municipality. So we wanted to help them understand all the things that were coming with this wave of BEAD, so they could kind of get ahead of it. And then hopefully that would establish us as an expert and maybe a preferred partner, and hopefully give us the edge up when it comes time to ask for a local match or some kind of local engagement. And I'm proud to say we've raised around $60 million between grants and local engagement to help match some of the efforts we're doing.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So you guys recently just passed 200,000 fiber passings across Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. That's a pretty big milestone. So what does that mean for you guys?
Yeah, so, for us, business as usual is building around 85,000 passings a year. we're in Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois, which can have tough winters. We hired a new COO this past year that came up from the South. So we moved here from Alabama. And when he moved here, I said, hey, the last 2 winters have been really mild. So let's gear up the construction. Let's get the machine ready to do BAU all year. Well, then we had one of the worst winters in recent history. And so we went from thinking we were going to do 5,000 to 10,000 passings a month to doing 2,500 to 4,000 a month. And we lost, I think, 2 weeks of productivity in January and another 2 weeks of productivity in February just due to the weather. So anyways, our plan is to continue building 85,000 passings per year, while we then on top of that lever in the BEAD and other grant projects. So we have a pretty good runway to 500,000 passings, fiber to the home passings. Another strategy that we're trying to do is to intentionally convert our fixed wireless subscribers from fixed wireless to fiber. We started in 2020 with 11,000, and through intentionally leveraging grants, we've moved that number to 5,000, and we have a goal to be at around 2,000 in the next 2 years.
So if I look at this map, obviously the lakes there between Indiana and Michigan, are you guys leveraging any undersea cable, near shore cable, or fiber?
We will be. One of our partners won a grant, I think an NTIA middle mile grant, but I could be wrong. It might have been a Michigan Broadband grant, but it's going to be a path that goes straight under Lake Michigan from kind of west of Grand Rapids over to Chicago to land at the 350 Cermak data center. And so today we're one of the few entities that has leveraged the Indiana toll road to use dark fiber from 350 Cermak across the northern part of Indiana. So we basically have a protected right-of-way backbone that's built out with, I think, 32 400 gig waves or something like that. It's a crazy amount of capacity. And that's the southern infrastructure that we're using. And then we'll use that undersea cable route across Lake Michigan that'll be built sometime in the next couple of years to close the ring.
So, the fixed wireless has kind of had a nice little bubble here recently with, firstly commercially and now with Secretary Ludnick kind of opening the door for fixed wireless, and especially unlicensed fixed wireless. As a provider of both fixed wireless and fiber, why, as a provider, are you overbuilding your fixed wireless with fiber? And what is the experience difference for the people you serve?
Yeah, Gary. So I believe that unlimited, future-proof fiber is going to unlock innovations that we really can't even imagine today. I think about my son Noah, who was born in 2006, and so he knows a world that his phone is always connected. But my 2 older sons grew up in a world where the iPad lost connectivity when he got out of the driveway. And if you think about like what that digital native experience has been for my son Noah versus my 2 kids, Josh and Nick, I feel like it's going to be that on steroids with AI. In fact, right before this, I was doing an AI prompt to ask who invented the internet about that Al Gore joke, and found that Vincent Cerf was one of the pioneers of TCP/IP. But so anyways, we believe that fiber optic is going to unlock all kinds of innovations. And the truth is, fixed wireless is an absolutely fantastic product. It can deliver a really great end user experience, but it's going to be limited by the laws of physics and how many bits you can cram into a megahertz. And so as we get into, Surf today is offering 8 gig packages in many of our markets. We're having actually around a 15% take rate there. So it's surprising who subscribes to that and what they might be using it for. But as that becomes more prevalent and the user demand kind of grows, I think there's going to be a point where fixed wireless is going to have to move to millimeter wave or something else, which is really short distance. So I think that it's going to be a solution for a while, but ultimately we need to have fiber to as many addresses as possible. In terms of the experience, I believe that if you deploy a fixed wireless network properly, you don't take any shortcuts, you put up good equipment, you're careful with spectrum management, you can deliver a really good end user product. Our net promoter score across fixed wireless and fiber is 70, so our customers are pretty happy with our service overall.
What so are they this? I mean, obviously you can't have the same service offerings if you're offering 8 gig.
It's, on the fixed wireless side, we've took a conservative approach to go at 100 by 20.
So you're pretty much limited.
25 by 3. Sorry, 25 by 3.
25 by 3.
Yeah, our equipment can support 100 by 20, but we feel more comfortable delivering a reliable 25 by 3, even though we could scale up to 100 by 20.
Okay, so how does that work then to meet the statute? Are you going to then offer a higher?
We're not going to change anything. Those fixed wireless areas will be eligible for BEAD, and we're not going to challenge that.
Okay. So they basically, those could be overbuilt with fiber.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be our own fiber, but there's there's AT&T, Brightspeed, Frontier also very active in our area. Comcast has won some grants in the area, so I expect that it's going to be a robust and competitive process.
So one of the questions came in was about data caps. Previously rules prevented data caps. Now the new rules allow it. Are you going to, given your fiber products, is there any reason to have a data cap?
Yeah, we don't cap our fixed wireless or our fiber, so no concern from our side on the data caps.
So what is tell me your most popular fiber service? What speeds are those?
I would say today the majority are buying the 1 gig package, and the ARPU ends up being across. So we have a pricing schedule that kind of adjusts to the competitive nature in the market, but across the board that ARPU is probably around $71.
So $71 for a gig symmetric?
That's right, yes.
That's not bad. And then what would be the 25/3 fixed wireless? What's that cost?
Well, that's the beauty of it. The subscribers today are paying $82. So when we deploy fiber, they're very happy to switch from an $82 product to a $70-something product.
Yeah, I guess that would, you save $12 and you get 10 times more capacity.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
That's the nice thing about fiber is it just keeps getting cheaper. So
yep.
One of the questions came in is, how can someone get a copy of your book?
Well, that's my buddy Steve, and I will send him a copy. But it is actually available on Amazon for free, I believe. But send me an email. We'll get you a copy if we have some available. We have a few dozen available. All
right. Well, let's kind of circle back on, we've been doing a lot of, we had permitting summits and trying to do a lot with permitting. Can you talk a little bit about, railroad and DOT permitting, what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, it's across the board. We've got our funnel filled enough now that we're able to sort of overcome some of the permitting delays and challenges that the railroads and DOTs permit. There's certain jurisdictions that turn around a permit pretty quickly, and there's others that take 30 days. And when you hit the 31st day, they send you a request for a change, and then you send it back, and then this shot clock starts over again, and it can be a year before the permit comes through. The beauty of working in 3 states at the same time is that we have a wide range of markets and a wide range of DOT areas, a wide range of locate jurisdictions, a wide range of municipalities. And so, right now we're shooting for 85,000 passings this year. We're at like 25,000 built so far this year. And, we've got 125,000 that we could build. So if we get a delay in one area, we'll just continue to build in another area, and overall we'll move towards the average of 85,000.
Well, I tell you what, Gene, you guys are just doing amazing work, and congratulations, your Net Promoter Scores. It sounds like that the communities you serve are really grateful to have you there to really, kind of allow them to participate in the, the digital future. So you got a big event coming up in Maryland. So when is this Ironman Maryland event?
Yeah, it's Ironman Maryland is September 21st. So if you're a praying type, pray for no jellyfish.
So so tell me, what's your target there?
I want to survive. I want to just finish. This is my last one. So the guy that got me into this is a longtime friend, and so he got me into Ironmans in 2009, although he himself has never done a full Ironman. So I said, I will do my last when you do your first. And so that is September 21st. I'm not really only doing it because I committed to do that with him, but otherwise I'm sticking to half Ironmans, a little shorter distance.
Well, again, congratulations to you and your team on everything that you're doing across the Great Lakes and for passing the 200,000 fiber passings. That is amazing. So really appreciate you sharing your industry expertise and experience and insight for their audience today. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Look forward to getting back together next Wednesday with Chuck Irvin, the Chief Revenue Officer at 123Net, discuss fiber build value, turning connectivity into revenue along Michigan's I-75 corridor. So you're not going to want to miss that. So thanks again. And Gene, great talking to you. Always enjoy it.